Oh crap. Still loading. I'm sure we're already on YouTube and it's just loading on my end because it's been doing this to me lately.
Oh, great. Then it got me blowing my nose.
Oh no, I think we're just live now. Hold on. Uh, so I just gotta share this out really quick. Okay. I'm gonna have to ask Spin to grab me the tablet. I forgot to grab my chat, so I don't even have the chat right now. Um, set up right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Everything's good. Okay. So anyway, we have the camera, so I know this is. Oh, I almost didn't record again. See?
Hmm.
Oh dear. Welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Joining me tonight is somebody that I am very honored to call a very close friend of mine. I've known this person for the last several months, and we've become very close. Her, I and Spinja. She actually had us on her quantum health transformation series as students, and it was one of the most beneficial things I think I've personally ever done as far as health and personal growth. And if you haven't watched that, absolutely, you need to go and check that out. But why she's joining us tonight is her and I have a similarity, and I've never actually got to sit down and hear the bits and pieces of her transdimensional experiences because that's the thing her and I have in common. So tonight, my guest is the absolutely wonderful Karen Holton, and she's going to be sharing her experiences on the big ship. And I'm just going to put out the caveat on this. My understanding of how these things happen is because our consciousness exists on many, many different times, at many, many different places, many, many different realities. And this is how these things can kind of overlap sometimes. So, what has happened with Karen is an amazing experience, and I'm really excited to hear the absolute details of it because I've only caught the bits and I've been waiting. So thank you so much for joining me, Karen.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on, Don. Yeah. So, how this happens? Well, it took me actually years to figure out approximately how it happens. And, maybe we could save that for another discussion because I have quite a bit to talk about today. But basically, I had been using, well, first of all, I had had an angelic experience a few years prior. I won't get into that. I'll save that for another show. But that set me up for transdimensional experiences. And I say transdimensional, meaning that I can slip in and out of this dimensional reality into other dimensional realities. So, going back to about 2012, 2013, I was actually had been using cannabis medically. I've been using it for pain and for all kinds of medical applications. And then I quit, uh, completely quit, just because I like to do a detox every once in a while, make sure I'm not addicted, make sure I can still function without it, that kind of thing. And it was while I was not using cannabis. And by the way, I was not using any other substances at the time. I wasn't even on any pharmaceutical medication, nothing like that, not even over the counter stuff. And So it started off with what I thought was a dream, except there was definitely a time dilation. So the first night that I was, I'll just say gone, even though it all happens in the same, it happens outside of time and space. So quite literally it's happening here, but also not the way we understand here is, right? And so I went on to the big ship and I was there for about 2 weeks. And it was a very interesting process. So while I was there, the first thing that I noticed was I was in this big room and I was in there with other people. And I knew something was off about them, but I didn't know what. So, like, for instance, on Earth, we have a lot of diversity in skin tones. Some people have really wide noses, some narrow noses, some big eyes, some small. We're all very different. No two of us look alike as far as our ears and stuff go. But the languages that they were speaking, some of them weren't talking to anybody. But the few people who were able to communicate using speech, they were languages I had never heard before. And so I kind of put two and two together and went, wait a minute, these people are not Earth people. I mean, they're people, but because they really look a lot like us, but there's something off here. I didn't know what it was at the time. So I'll just skip over the more boring parts. But basically, there was two great big guys. They looked like they were like 7 feet, 7 foot 5 inches tall, very robust and muscular. And one was standing at one end of the room, and the other one was standing at the other end of the room. And I knew we were waiting for something, but I didn't know what. And at first, I thought maybe they were guards or something keeping us in there. It was very weird. So I went up to one of them and I said, "What's going on? And when are things going to get started? Because I know we're here for a purpose." And he didn't say anything, but I could understand in my head that he was telling me, just be patient. Things are going to be very clear very soon. So I went, okay. And it was at that point that I realized that they don't speak with words, they use telepathy. And later I found out telepathy is the universal language because words are bullshit. Words are symbols and they have confined meanings. And people can fool other people with words, and words are a great source of misunderstanding. But when you're using telepathy, it's absolutely clear what the message and what the communication is. So anyway, pretty soon, and this kind of freaked me out. Oh, I want to go back a little bit. So I didn't have anything to do and I was bored. And there was some other stuff that I did while I was in that room, but I won't get into that. But I noticed that the walls were kind of a creamy, pale, kind of a yellow, creamy color. And I thought, they looked the same as the floor and the ceiling. It was all the same texture. And I thought, that's really weird. And I also noticed that when I walked, the floor was not exactly spongy, but there was like a little bit of give. It was not what we would perceive as solid the way our floors and walls are. So I went over to the wall and I ran my finger down the wall, and to my surprise, there was little ripples that emanated from where I had slid my finger down the wall. And I thought, whoa, that is really freaky. And I wonder what that's about. And it wasn't too much longer before, and this is the weird part. Like, I'm telling you, a lot of what I experienced, you could call magic, but it's not magic. It's actually the ship is alive, the ship is sentient, and it has what we would consider nanoparticles, biological nanoparticles that self-assemble into what we need when we need it. And so the ship also is telepathic. So it knows what we want, what we need, what's supposed to happen, and it facilitates that. So all of a sudden, at one end where one of these guys was standing, they're just materialized like a big open doorway space. There was no actual door, no lever, nothing like that. And in walked more people who, again, looked very much like those of us in the room, except they were all bigger. They were quite a bit bigger, like I would say 7 feet, 7'5", 8 feet tall, very muscular, very fit, very beautiful, very attractive. And they looked very much like us. So they were not that different biologically. Anyway, so we were ushered into down a corridor and into another room, and it had we kind of lined up in queue, and it had like a big ovoid shaped tube that ran the length of the room. And it was about 7 feet high, about 5 feet wide, and each one of us was basically directed to walk through this tube. And I didn't realize what was happening. Anyway, when it came my turn, I walked through the tube. There was no pain, there was no weird shit going on in there. It was very just walking through a tube. But it wasn't until I got out the other side that I was paired up with what I'm going to call a buddy. So they pair you up with a buddy who looks the closest to you biologically, so you feel more comfortable. And that person helps to orient you to the whole process, what's going on, basic needs like food and where we slept, all that kind of stuff. Now, when I tell this experience to people, often I get, oh, you were astral projecting, but no, this was very physical, very, very physical reality. I looked down at my clothes and it was really weird because these were not clothes I would have chosen for myself. I have no idea where they came from. I was wearing these really baggy khaki shorts and kind of a white t-shirt and a very lightweight jacket that was kind of a puke green color. I never would have chosen those clothes. They weren't mine. I don't know where they came from. But I was matched to a buddy, and she looked very much again like us. She had very pale skin, but her skin had a bit of a teal tinge to it. She had very red hair, kind of orangey red hair, and it was very short, and it was in little spirals or tufts all over her head, like, like a cowlick, or I don't know if you've ever seen those guinea pigs and they're covered in these little swirls like that. That's what her hair looked like. And she had kind of golden brown eyes with like sparkly gold highlights. Her eyes were bigger than proportion than most Earth people. And she just had very straight nose, and her jaw was quite narrow. I did notice that. But she looked very fit, and she just wore something that looked like a poncho with slippers, and she had a few tattoos, and she had a few bracelets. And but I got a very warm feeling from her right away, and I felt very, very comfortable with her. And it was at that point that I realized that, and over time, because there was obviously some learning and training, I didn't spontaneously just know everything in the moment. But eventually I learned that when I walked through that tube, what it did was it took data from my biology. So it took a sample of my DNA. It took my current health status. It took down, it absorbed or somehow displayed everything you could know about me, including my emotional content, past life information, everything about me was that all that information, all that data was taken. So then after that, she wanted to show me basically the amenities. And we walked down, we left the big room where this tube was and the other people. We walked down what you would call hallways. Now, there's no square rooms or hallways the way we have it. Everything was very tubular and very circular. And everything was this creamy, almost white color. And it felt and looked a little bit like a very soft kind of leather. So anyway, she led me down one of these corridors, for lack of a better term. and took a few curves, and we ended up at a place where there was just a wall. Like there was nothing there. And she turned towards it, and all of a sudden, a doorway just materialized. And we went in, and I noticed that I was in what you would call a room, although it was more oval or circular shaped. And there was nothing in there that I could see. But I had a feeling that this was my space. So she let me know this was my space. So in my mind, I could understand her wanting to know how I slept at home. So I thought about my bed at home. And then a platform just came out of the wall, just sort of materialized. Like there was no pixelation or anything like that. It just self-assembled is the only word I can think of for it. This platform came out and it had like a futon on it. And she just sort of motioned for me to lay down on it and see if it was what I needed. I laid down on it, was extremely comfortable. And I was very happy that I had a place to lay down. I didn't know how long I was going to be there. And then I got up from there, and then it just slid right back into the wall. And then beside that, um, she just motioned with her hand, and out came, I don't know, something like a kind of like a small bureau with drawers that you actually could grasp little handles and pull it out, more like little knobs and pull out drawers. And she showed me this. And I didn't exactly know what that was about, but I went, okay. And then she went a little bit to the side of that, and another door, a smaller doorway appeared. It was tall enough for me, but it was,
Say hi to everyone.
pardon?
I
Sorry,
did.
what?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you something really quick. Um, when you said the bed came out of the wall, right? Was it actually part of the ship, like it, almost like cellular separation is what it would look like? Like,
Yeah, everything is part of the ship. There's no furniture per se. Everything is part of the ship, and it just is self-assembling, smaller than what I could see, but very quickly, without any pixelation, it just came to be. Like I said, there's a lot of overlap with the way we would think of magic as to how things became manifest. So in this other doorway, it was tall enough for me to walk through without bending down, but she motioned to another sort of the wall in there, and out came another platform, and up from the platform came this tube, and it was oval shaped and it was kind of pleated, and she basically indicated that's where I would go to the bathroom. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then she also showed me right beside there, kind of like a sink kind of came out from the wall. It was oval and water was flowing. And you know, if I wanted to refresh myself. And then there was also what you would consider a shower in there. So I thought that was pretty cool. So she showed me all of that. And then we went back into the little room, and what's interesting is that by this time I actually had to pee, and I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And she knew right away. I guess she could read my mind a lot easier than I could read hers. But so I went back into the bathroom, and she just motioned how to use it. And it was really cool because like they don't have toilet paper or anything like that. You just basically, pardon me for being graphic, but you just drop your drawers and you squat a little, and this tube comes up and meets you at your butt, and you do your business, and then it just sort of sprays like a little, what feels like a little poof of air. And whatever it is, it dissolves any moisture or debris or poop or whatever you want to call it, and just takes it back down the tube. So you don't actually have to touch yourself or touch anything when you go to the bathroom. Then the tube would go back down to the platform, and the platform would then go back into the wall. It was really interesting. So I'm going to have
I'd
a
be
run.
down.
Huh?
I'd be down with that. I want one of those toilets now. That sounds
Oh
wonderful.
yeah. Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. I'm in the habit of washing my hands after I pee, so I actually did run my hands under the water, and then there's a little device that just like it's like a poof of air, and then it all the moisture's gone. So it's just like instant. So then I went out, and she could tell that I was a little bit overwhelmed with the situation, right? And so she just sort of um motion for me to tell her what was going on for me. And at this point, I was not proficient at telepathy, so I was still using words. And I said to her, well, I'm not sure how this is happening, but I got a little cat at home that depends on me to feed her and clean her litter box. And, I got people at home that don't know I'm gone. I said, how am I going to, who's going to look after my cat? Number one, I was worried about my cat, right? And then she let me know through telepathy that basically I'd be there for a while. But when I woke up in the morning, for me, it would be the very next morning, as though no time had gone by. And so basically, it all happened within one night's sleep. So over the next couple of days, we did things like we went for walks around. We pretty much stayed on one floor of the big ship. So the big ship, you got to understand, is massive, massive, Dawn. It's like holds millions of people. It's really, really big, and there's different floors to it. And how you can get around is you can walk, but they also have like um, I would consider it a little bit like a moving sidewalk where you stand off to the side. It's like a conveyor belt, but you can't see any moving pieces. I have no idea how it works. But if I was going to travel from one side of the ship to the other, I would probably use that because it would be kind of a long walk and take a lot of time, right? And then they also had vertical lifts that worked very, very different that took you between floors. And the vertical lifts were um, basically, if you can imagine coming to the edge of a cliff and it just dropping straight down, and you look up and it just goes straight up. And there's these two little handles. On swimming pools, there are these ladders that you can hold when you climb out of the pool, or if you want to climb into the pool, like that, but a
Yeah.
lot narrower. And they did look metallic. And so there was this gizmo right off the edge. And so my buddy showed me, she stepped off and she didn't fall. You just sort of are cushioned. I don't know if it's anti-gravity or if you're on a poof of air. Like, I don't know how it works. All I know is if you step off, and then you hold these two handles, and then depending on how hard you squeeze, that determines how fast you go up or down, right? So that was pretty cool. And so we went down like quite far, like 2 kilometers down. And then you just let go and it stops and you just jump off. There's no impact, there's no sensation. Like, in an elevator, you feel your stomach go a little funny when you're going up or going, none of that. I have no idea how it works, but it was very cool. So that's how you get around on the big ship. So for the next week or so, we basically went for walks, and she introduced me not with words but with telepathy to other beings so that I would feel like I was amongst community and friends. At night, she stayed with me all the time, 24/7. She even slept next to me to make sure that if I woke up, I wouldn't be afraid. So this is the other weird thing about it that I can't explain, Dawn, is I was in my bed sleeping, as far as I know, for one night. But because I was on the big ship and they don't have day or night, but they have sleep cycles and awake cycles, I definitely was having awake cycles that would be like our days. I was having sleep cycles that were like night sleeping, getting up, going to the bathroom, eating food. Like there was a real physical experience that was going on there. So the other thing she did was she gave me um, you could call them headphones, but they weren't headphones. It was just like a thin plastic like, kind of like what girls wear in their hair to keep their bangs off their face, like a little plastic headband. But it went around the back of my head, and it had two little tabs that rested gently on my temples. And when I did that, I connected directly with the big ship. So a lot of my questions I had and things I wanted to know, I was directly interfacing with the big ship. And it was a little bit like doing Google search, just I had queries and then the information would come. And the information would come very much like virtual reality, where it was like I was there and I was experiencing. So that was really cool. And that's where I learned how to use telepathy, because that's really important. I'm what they call a loud broadcaster. Everything I'm thinking just blasts out. And it's not considered polite or appropriate. And so I had to learn how to modify my thinking, if that makes sense. Do you have any questions before I go on about the telepathy?
I do. What was it that you ate, and did everybody on the ship eat? Because I know like different species, different things, right? So I was just curious about those two things.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good question. Now, I saw no evidence of animal husbandry. So there was nothing like rabbits or chickens or laying eggs or cows or nothing like that. But they did have these beautiful botanical gardens that just grew everywhere. So if we're out for a walk, generally we would eat one main meal a day. But while we're out for a walk, we would just pick things and eat them. And she would suggest, pick that and taste that, pick that and taste that. And I quickly discerned what I really liked and what I didn't. And it didn't take long before I was intuitively picking what I needed to satisfy me. And then when it came to the main meal of the day, I would pick two or three things. And then we go to an eating area. And this is really cool too. So we'd have these like small feeding stations. So people would group at these different feeding stations. They would just come right up out of the floor because they're this self-assembling nanotech. I don't know. That's what I'm calling it, but that may not be what it really was, right? And it was a very social time. And we would take turns eating and preparing food with other people so that we got to know other beings. And there was always a heating device and a cooling device, depending on what we wanted to do. And they would usually prepare foods and then I would taste them. And what's interesting is it took me a couple of weeks, no, maybe a week, a little bit longer than a week before my taste buds adapted to these new foods. And then they tasted really delicious. But in the beginning, they didn't really have that much flavor. And then there are some people who do things like do fermenting processes and things like that, where they can make things that would be like for us cheeses or different things like that. I don't know how they did it exactly. And they were always really happy to bring that to supper and share that and have me taste it and see what I thought about it. They're really curious about the newcomers. So the food grows everywhere. It's beautiful. Vines along the walls and these sort of resting areas with seats where they would have beautiful, what look like flowers and little shrubs, and very beautiful and grows everywhere. And so let me get to a little bit of technical bit about the big ship. So the big ship is organically a being, it's sentient. But there's different systems within the ship. Like, for instance, there's nobody cleaning up and vacuuming and dusting. It doesn't happen. There's what I would call a respiratory system on the big ship. And what would happen is, because like all the beings are a little bit different. Some have really sensitive sense of smell, others not so much. Some have not not BO, but have a scent to them, and others that don't, not so much. And because of this, what's happening is there's like a ventilation system that's always sending out these little poofs of very fine dust that then gets circulated and then reabsorbed or vacuumed up, or I have no idea, but gets pulled from the atmosphere so that everything is always clean and fresh. So that would be very much like its respiratory system. It also has a recycling system where at the end of the day, whether it's our dirty laundry or the plate we're eating off of, or our leftover food or the waste from our toilets, whatever, it all goes in and gets recycled. And they have an organic system where they have these critters, I call them bugs, that live in there and they break everything down to a fluid state. And they're perfectly happy. That's their habitat. That's what they do. They're just perfectly happy to do that. And then from there, everything is in a liquid state, and they have something that's like a 3D printer that will print whatever you want. So you basically put in an order before you go to sleep for the evening sleep cycle, and it shows up in that little dresser I was telling you about with the little drawers. So your clothes are waiting there for you, whatever you might need is waiting there for you. And it also provides the fluid that provides us with what I would call a bath system. So our culture is you get up, you wake up from your night cycle, your sleep cycle, and everybody heads to the baths. And the baths is in this huge, huge room. And it's not like a giant tub, it's like little rivers that snake all around. And people just gather. Everybody's naked, nobody's embarrassed or ashamed. Some people have more hair, some have less. We're all a bit different, and people just hang out in there. And what's interesting is the fluid is not water. I don't know what it is, but it gives you health. It gives you some kind of a health boosting element to it. So there was the bath, and then after the after it circulates through there and we're all done, then it goes into what I would call the walls and other areas, and it nourishes the plants. So it's like a hydroponic system. And this is very much like the ship's circulatory system. And and then its interface with us. Eventually, we didn't need to use the virtual reality headsets. We learned to do it without. But in the beginning, I definitely needed them to communicate with the big ship. That's like the ship's computer, like the ship's brain. So this thing is organic, it's sentient, it's a very very real thing. So I got to know different beings, and they're not all the same. There are various skin tones, dark browns, light browns, a lot of browns, um, pale skin like mine, and also like with a bluish tinge like my buddy, and also some had kind of an orange tinge. And apparently this is because their planets from of origin have different light than what we get from our sun. And so when I get a tan and I turn brown, or if someone's born with brown pigment, what that is if you take all the colors in the visible light spectrum and you mix them together, just like if you have paints or crayons that are all like blue, green, yellow, red, orange. If you mix it all together, it turns brown. And so what it does is it reflects back all the different um, colors of the visible light spectrum. Well, other beings have other visible light spectrums that are reflected back. And so that's how come you get these curious and very interesting different pigments and skin tones. So, do you have any questions at this point?
Just one more, and then we'll go into the telepathy. Did they ever notice that, like, okay, I'm assuming when you wake up, you're gone from there. Did they ever notice that you were missing or not there, or ask where you went?
No, no. Now, this is an interesting thing. So, after I was there for about 10 days, I woke up in the morning here on Earth in my reality, and my first thought was, oh, fuck, I'm back because I missed it. I got used to it being there. And the beings are very loving and very kind and so awesome. And it was so easy to be alive in that environment. And when I came back to my mundane life, it was disappointing. And at that point, I thought I was dreaming, Dawn. I seriously thought I was dreaming. So, to make a long story short, this happened every night from the moment I fell asleep to the time I woke up in the morning for 3 months of our Earth time. So during the day, I had my mundane life, and at night, I had my extraterrestrial life. And what's also interesting about it is there's a time dilation. So I could be gone for weeks or months within one night of our Earth time sleep nighttime sleep cycle. So in the beginning, I thought I was dreaming, but then I went, no, this can't be dreaming. I'm learning too much. It's completely congruent. I wasn't dreaming at that time. When I have dreams, it's all kind of weird and discombobulated, and things don't really make sense. And it doesn't follow a succinct storyline the way my experience did. So it didn't take long, like within a week, that I realized I was really having these experiences. And then I was scared because I thought I was crazy. Like, how can I never heard of anything like this? This is years before I heard of anyone else having interdimensional or transdimensional experiences. And it was a mind bender, to be blunt. It caused me to completely withdraw from society as I would spend the day trying to unpack the week or 2 weeks or 2 months that I had been away in a single night. Like, it was a mind-blowing experience.
I I want to second that because you know full well, and I'm going to share. I went back to work. It took me 10 months, almost 11, to get my shit together after my transdimensional experiences. So I can validate what she's saying. It fucks you up.
It
It really
does.
does.
It does. But in a good way. And it
Oh, yeah.
actually took me till 2017 before I started telling other people about it. Because, I would be off and on again. I would think, oh my God, I'm insane, I'm crazy. And then I'd go, no, this is a real thing. And why is it happening to me? Because I'm nobody special. Why is it happening for me? And I think the reason it happens for me is because two reasons. One reason is when I was a child, I had some horrible traumatic events. And what trauma does is it causes us to be able to dissociate. That's the only way we can recover and go on with life, is to learn how to dissociate. And I think that gives us an edge for transdimensional and interdimensional adventures. But the other thing is I was allowed to remember for a purpose. So I was taught that there are millions of us on Earth having transdimensional experiences, but only a few remember. And so what happens is we go through a process with two or three other beings, and they help us to suppress our memories. Because, for one thing, as you mentioned, it's a mind fuck. But the other thing, too, is we're here to do for soul evolution, to be human in the human experience in this dimensional reality for a reason. We got to learn how to deal with our shit. We got to learn how to deal with our relatives. We got to learn how to balance our friggin' checkbook or lack thereof. You know what I mean? We have to, and so most people don't remember. They think they're dreaming. And that's why I really encourage people that think they might be having these experiences to, contact or at least watch videos that you do, that I do. I've got a channel called Aliens and Angels, and sorry, that's my show. on at Karen Holton TV, but also I've got another show called the Quantum Guide Show where I'm interviewing people. You've got your After Dark show. There's a lot of we can turn people on to other people that have had these experiences with these beings transdimensional, and trust that maybe what you're experiencing is a real thing, and it's our God-given right, our natural ability. But of course, in the construct that we live in this three-dimensional reality, we're taught, no, that's your imagination, that's not true, that's mental illness. Because if we come to accept and embrace our gifts, we're not that easy to control anymore. So sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a political rant, but I
No,
think that is why. So, but I was allowed to remember with a purpose. And I didn't remember everything right away. It took years to slowly remember stuff. Like I had an experience. Can I just tell you about a really weird experience I had while I was away? Okay, so this I only just remembered like a month ago. And it just popped into my head and I went, "Oh my God, I forgot all about that." Memories are like that. They're not always just right there. And anyway, so I had gone with some beings down to a planet, and they had, I don't remember what the ceremony was, but it was a solemn kind of a ceremony. It's similar to a wedding, but it wasn't a wedding. I don't know what it was because their culture is completely different than what I'm familiar with here on Earth. And all the women wore these beautiful gowns with long trails behind them. They were all white, and they had these headdresses that were a little bit like a Spanish lace. You see the, I don't know, older shows where they have these Spanish women with this all this lace up on their heads and stuff. And after the ceremony, I went outside and everybody was out on the lawns and there's beautiful gardens and people were sitting in little groups visiting. And I saw a creature that I thought was a dog. And I thought, oh my God, they got dogs here. So I started walking towards it. And as I got closer, I realized that its eyes were on the side, kind of like deer. Their eyes were on the side. It wasn't straight up in front, but it had a snout like a dog and a body very much kind of like a golden lab retriever, kind of like that. And I went, oh, is that ever cool? And I started walking towards it. When I got about 10 feet away from this creature, it lifted its hindquarters. And right away I went, oh my God, this isn't good. And I turned around and started walking away, right? Next thing I know, I have this huge splat in the middle of my back and the back of my head. And two of the women that were in that group came running over to me and through telepathy, apologized profusely. Apparently, that is very much like a dog. They have them as pets, but that's their warning. So, you know how we have on Earth skunks that will go up on their back and spray you with a stink? Well, this didn't smell, but it was slimy and it was disgusting. It was all over my back and the back of my head. And so they ushered me into the building and we went to the what you would consider a washroom and they got me cleaned up and they were so sorry because they thought that I'm going to call it a dog was going to be okay and was going to behave itself. Most people know there's ways of approaching a group that the dog doesn't do that. You know what I mean? But for some reason, because I was new to the culture, I was a little off, and I guess the dog wasn't going to take any chances. So yeah, so I mean, isn't that weird? And that happened to me while I was away. I thought you'd get a kick out of it being a dog lover.
oh yeah, that's and it's funny because I could actually visualize it as you were explaining it. Um, One of the things I've learned to do because I still have experiences like I've explained this on your show and several other times. Like I can go somewhere for 3 weeks and wake up and have the exact same thing as you. Like, oh God damn it, I'm back here. Like, but have you ever had the opportunity in one of your experiences to see your own reflection? Because I've seen myself a couple of different times in a couple of different ways, and it never ceases to amaze me. So I didn't know if that's something you had checked out or not.
I have, and that leads me to another interesting thing. So when we go there, the first time I went there, I'm sure I was taken physically. Like a spaceship never showed up and beamed me aboard. I didn't have any of that. I don't know how I got there, to be honest with you, but I was there physically. But after that, when I went there physically, I looked very much like me. And I used to have really long white hair, and I had really long white hair there as well. I looked like me, but I looked younger and, of course, in much better shape than what I'm in. And and I found out that basically you can travel there a number of different ways. There's the auric way, where you're just etherically go there, and I do that sometimes for the exopolitical ambassador work that I do. Yeah, we're going to have to do more shows, Don, if you want to hear, because there's the intergalactic ambassador work. There is the pre-settlement program and the training for that. Then there's the resettlement program. And there's a lot of information I have to go with that, not to mention more training that I had on the big ship. And we didn't even really get to the telepathy training yet. But anyway, so then you can also have what they call a clone, and it's like a one size fits all. It's just a generic um, physical body that we can transfer. So Karen's body would be still sleeping at home in her pajamas in her bed, but I can transfer my soul, I guess, into the generic one, what I call the one size fits all. Now you can tell people apart because we have different mannerisms, different ways we walk, and we communicate telepathically. So it's pretty easy to tell who's who. So there's that, but then you also can have an identical clone. So remember I talked about we went down that corridor and they got my DNA, and they got not didn't take my DNA, but they had a, I don't know, an image of it or whatever, all the data that's in my DNA. And they actually created for me a healthier, younger Karen that I could slip into, and it made me feel more comfortable being there. It wasn't as weird. They have one other kind of clone that's interesting, and that's what I call the utilitarian clone, where if you're going to be doing specific tasks that might be dangerous, or you might need specific equipment, that's built into the clone body that you would then transfer into so that you could go and do that kind of specialized work, and it wouldn't harm your good body, or your if you have a genetic body, or maybe ruin your clone, whatever, your one size fits all. So there's lots of options. These people, these beings are so advanced, but not that advanced on. So what I quickly learned is that they are at our next state of development. So as soon as we put away our bullshit and we exit the matrix or the construct, and we realize all of that's bullshit, it's all an inversion of what's real. What they tell you to eat, don't eat that, do the opposite. What they, it's just all bullshit. I mean, right now there's this insane system right now where they're trying to come up with candidates for the American president, and it's mind-bogglingly screwy. Not to mention here in Canada, we got Justin Trudeau and all their bullshit too. Okay, so once we realize that we can stop giving them our power, and then they have nothing, then they're like the emperor who's standing there with no clothes, because it's all bullshit. And once we exit that, and then we say, what do we want to be? And we become the change we want to see in the world, right? So we start to take care of our bodies. We don't want to do war anymore. It's all based on lies. We're taught this is the enemy and they're bad and they want to rape your children and this and that. It's all lies, so that we would hate another national group. Like, we got to put all that away. We got to put away our intergenerational dysfunction and start being healthier, better adjusted human beings. And we also have to start taking good care, not just of our planet, but of our homes, of our children, our pets, our parents, our grandparents, and the geographical area that we live in, so that we can thrive. Once we do all of that, then we're in a position to have more contact with these advanced beings. And that's another thing. The bad news, guys, is as far as I understand, at least with this group of beings, they are not going to come down and rescue us. We have to solve our own problems, and we can. Just if you had a child and you always did everything for them, they would never develop, they would never grow up. Well, the same thing with ET. They're not going to come down and rescue us. We got to learn how to do this on our own, and we can. And then the other thing is, they're not going to bring us up to the big ship. The way we are would be so friggin' disturbing to these beings. They are peaceful, loving, compassionate, empathetic beings. That would traumatize the whole damn ship. They're not going to do that. And they're not going to resettle us on planets where we're going to just screw up and make the same bullshit and Lord of the Flies routine and power and all of that. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. Sorry, sorry, I got a little bit carried away there, but just wanted to say that.
No. And between eye contact and being able to understand each other, I absolutely love the idea of you coming on, say, every third Friday until we break all of this stuff down, because I think you're an absolute wealth of knowledge and have a whole bunch of valuable stuff to share with us. Because these are the things that people don't do anymore. Nobody sits down with the people that have been there, done that. It's all Google and bullshit. No, talk to somebody with actual experience. And
Yeah.
I would love to have you at least once a month.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it would be a great idea because I have so much more I want to talk about. So the other thing is I'm working on my book. I'm actually going to go into retreat in September where I'm going to really, no disrespect to anybody, but I'm going to really pare down my social interactions, just do my minimum for my shows, because I need to get myself into that headspace where I'm working on my book. And there's so many distractions in the summertime that I can't seem to do that. I really want to get it published. I really want to get it out there. And Preston Dennett's helping me. He's not helping me write it, but he's giving me advice, on how to get published and, my writing style, which because I've never written a book before, to make it more interesting. So yeah, I want to talk about the exopolitical work, and the least amount of memories is the exopolitical work. And basically, I go there and I transfer data. So it's my understanding of what's going on Earth today, how it's affecting me physically, emotionally, spiritually, how it's affecting my relationships with other people here on Earth. It's a lot of that kind of stuff, but there's also more that I don't remember, and it's a protection for me because that way men in black are not going to show up at my door, and the powers that be are not going to, I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid, but they're not going to be interested in me because I don't remember, and they would not be able to access that information. So that I don't have a lot, but of memory, but I know I do. That is the majority of the trips to the big ship that still happens today. Whereas the being what I would call physical on the big ship, that lasted for about 3 months of our Earth time at night. And like I said, there's a time dilation. So in all, I was away, if you added it all up, I was away like 3.5 years, and it was seamless. So you asked me, did they miss me? Was I gone? No, I wasn't gone because I would come back, do my day, go back to sleep, and I would be inserted right back to where I left off, which I thought was super interesting.
Do you think the sleep cycles are inverse? Like when you would go into biological shutdown on the big ship, was that your awake time here? Sorry, that just
Maybe,
popped into my head.
maybe, I don't know, but
Yeah,
maybe, I
I
don't know,
like
because
a
I
true
definitely have sleep
consciousness.
cycles. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
have sleep cycles when I'm there. And somebody has to drive this machine of my body during the day and not so much at night, right? So that makes sense, possibly. And then I also had training. I trained as a biologist, or no, a botanist. Sorry, all about plants. That was my specialty. And then I also had to learn how to use telepathy, and there's actually 3 stages to learning telepathy, and I can get into that. That was really interesting. And then there was the pre-settlement program where I would be part of an expedition where we would go to different planets, and we would have a quarantined area, and we would do scientific experiments. So that's the other thing I want to tell you. We also had these tablets. They're very much like twice the size of my cell phone. They have rounded corners, like my case has rounded corners. There's no dials, no buttons, or anything like that. And it would record data. I just have to sort of wave it over plants and things, and it would record everything about, what its makeup was on a molecular level, on a biological level, everything. But it also recorded my emotions and my feelings as I interacted with these plants and things. So we didn't actually have experiences with animals. It was pretty much dealt with plants. And like I said, we were quarantined so that we didn't disrupt the biosphere in any way, because everything you do, every footprint has an effect on the planet. We needed to keep things as pristine and perfect as the way we found them, right? So there was that whole thing. That was really interesting. And then I actually got to visit two worlds where they had been resettled. So basically, there are many, many, many worlds out there they have everything except humanoids, because humanoids are actually a genetic mutation. We were created. And so when you go to these different planets, they have water, atmosphere, gravity, all a little bit different, all a little bit different. And I didn't really have time to get into the healing pods that help prepare us for our journeys down to these different planets, because they have a little bit different oxygen content, a little bit different gravity, different circadian impulses that affect our rhythms. So we had to prepare for that. But anyway, I can talk about that on a show too. And then there's the so then there is actually a resettlement program where we help people to resettle. But anyway, I got to visit two worlds. One was very much like a tropical area. Like I didn't go to the whole world. I just went to one area where it had people, beings like us, put there to start over. There's a whole process to it that I don't have time to get into either. But that was really cool. And so you can choose the level of technology you want to go into. So for instance, if you're on a planet that's fairly safe and nice weather, and you're in an area where you're relatively safe, you might choose a zero technology reality where you do everything from scratch, and it's really cool. It's like pioneering in the best way possible. And or if you're on the second place I went to was a water world, and it had really bad storms, and it was not a very safe place to be. And the habitats all submerge. So when there's a big storm, they submerge, and they have their own atmosphere. There's no, like, water doesn't leak in or anything. I actually got really creeped out in my experience there. I can't wait to tell you about that. But that was a high tech habitat. But everybody on a planet has to have the same level of technology. So whatever you choose, there's other people that are settled in different areas, and you all have the same level of technology. That way you don't have the temptation to dominate each other, or screw things up for people when they decide how they want to live. Yeah, I know it's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a whole book, guys. It's a whole book. And even the stuff I share with you, Don, is not going to be everything. The part I'm
No.
not going to talk about until the book comes out is love, sex, and reproduction. There's a whole chapter
Oh.
on that. I ain't talking about that. I ain't spilling the beans until the book comes out, but I'll talk about everything else.
Um. I know we're almost there for our time tonight. Do you want to share with everybody about your shows and your services? Because we didn't even get into the health coach and the quantum transformation, everything you can in like the next 6 minutes.
Okay,
Because
I go really fast. Basically,
too.
you can find me on all pretty much all social media or podcast platforms at Karen Holton TV. I'm part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network with Chris Matthew, so is Dawn. And there you would type in, or if you want to find me, it's the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton. And then my everything I produce in a podcast, whether it's aliens and angels or just podcasts that I've just created, content I've created on my own, or even excerpts from my experiences off world. Everything is under the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton. And you can find me on Chris's website, Forbidden Knowledge .news. Is that right, Don? Forbidden Knowledge .news?
Yes.
Yeah, www. Anyway, I also have a website that has everything on it and tons of free resources under the free resources tab, including a program that I downloaded called the Quantum Health Transformation. And it's everything you need to know as an awakening person. So it goes into everything from quantum physics to things to help you with your psychology, to understand the male female energies we all carry, to how to detoxify internally, externally, how to make your own products for next to nothing so you don't have to use all that toxic, expensive crap from the store, how to eat properly. And there's no one way of eating. It depends on your genetics and what works for you. We're all different, but this gives you everything you need to know about all of that. How to detoxify from the construct, and then how to build your spiritual foundation, how to create your soul team, how to manifest super effectively, and how to become the change we want to see in the world. So that's all on there under my free resources tab. I also have a shop where you can buy my orgone generators. I created them. A friend of mine actually made them for me. I designed them, and they're one of a kind, limited supply, and they're beautiful, and they really help with the energetic environment of your home or your car or where you work. And I also have some services where I coach people to help them in their spiritual journeys. If they're having ET contact and they can't quite figure it out, or if they're having spiritual or paranormal experiences, if they just want to have a better life, I give intuitive advice and all kinds of stuff like that. And I also have some PDF copies of lessons, the quantum health transformation, as well as my other lessons. Like, for instance, this Sunday at noon Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Aliens and Angels, that podcast, I'm going to be giving a presentation all about alien implants. And how I found out about them was through my ET brothers and sisters, because they claim that implants are really holding us back. And implants can be physical, they can be metallic, they can be etheric, they can be genetic, so many different kinds of implants from different not so positive beings doing basically experiments on humans for thousands of years, and all about that. So I hope you'll join me. That's live on Sunday. And I don't know, did I miss anything? Quantum Guide Show is every Wednesday, 1 p.m., except for now it's 1 p.m. every Wednesday, Mountain Time, noon Pacific, and 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And there I interview people from all over the world who have something positive to offer humankind. There. Does
I
that 6 minutes? I try to go fast.
No, you did awesome. And I will definitely be watching that one on Sunday because there is so much, like we got like 2 minutes left and I don't want to run into it, but bullshit about implants and who can get them out of you and what you can do about them. There's so much bullshit. Oh, for $444, fuck off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I hear
That's
you.
a
I
help
hear
way to
you.
end the
I
show.
hear you. The trick is they all operate with frequency. And if you can get your head wrapped around that everything is energetic, and so the way that we get rid of them is through frequency, and that could be done through meditation, but it also can be done through a few other things like essential oils and even orgone generators. But the purpose is just to wake people up. They don't realize that it's like,
Yeah,
can you imagine if you had a backpack with 100 pounds of bricks in it and you're walking around with it all the time? You're not at your best. Same thing with implants.
that's going
Yeah.
to be an amazing show. So everybody should get in the chat and get in the audience on that one because it's sounds like it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I
Thank
won't
you
have as,
so much.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No,
Sorry
go
for
ahead. Oh,
interrupting you, Don. I was going to say I
oh no,
won't be able to interact as much with the chat as I'm giving my presentation because it's a lot of information. It's about 45 minutes altogether. I'm going to also read an article by Dr. Weir, who removed the physical implants and what his findings are as well. Anyway, I'll zip it. Thanks, Don.
no. Thank you so much for being my guest, and I am so happy that we're going to do this once a month because like that went way too fast. Um, so thank you everybody for watching, and I will catch you next time. And by the way, go outside because it is lovely. I'm just gonna end the stream, Karen, because I'm still doing this on my phone and I don't know how to do this right.
That's
So
all
thank
good.
you,
It's
Karen.
all good, Don. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.